we do have a little bit of a complicated, I don't think it's that complicated a discussion.
Okay.
However,
All right.
I know that whenever we start to talk about John Henry and his portfolio, it becomes a big sticking point for people because of the business end. But we had the news on Monday that John Henry had hired a bank, whatever one it was, to basically help facilitate the sale of Liverpool F.C.
Mm-hmm.
So the word is that Liverpool has a value between $4.5 billion and $5 billion.
Pretty good, yeah.
Pretty good money.
Yeah, not bad.
So there's a gentleman who covers the football world.
There you go.
Adel Al-Mishri, and hopefully I got that right.
Think you did?
He had a tweet yesterday that said, done deal, Liverpool, $5 billion, and it was just like a couple of emojis and a handshake and stuff like that, and then it's kind of quieted down. So the reports are a group out of Qatar are going to pull together their money, which they've got tons of it, and maybe give John Henry $5 billion for Liverpool. Now,
the soccer fans don't love him, by the way. Remember
No,
that?
they
Remember
don't.
when he tried making that like Super Liga or whatever, or like Super Duper Liga, whatever the hell, and then everyone's like, you can't just take all these teams, and people were pretty pissed off about
They were.
it. We didn't follow it all that closely here, but it definitely got brought up, and then he had they legit formed like a separate league, and then he had to like, no, we're not doing that now because there was such backlash. So my guess is there's plenty of Liverpool fans that are happy that he's selling.
I would think so. Now, for us over here in the mainland, there is another big team for sale in a league that prints money. That would be the Washington Commanders of the NFL. And Lord knows we know the finances of the NFL maybe better than any of the big league sports. And apparently that sale price would be about $5 billion.
$5 billion for that team and everything that they've done.
Well, and that's the thing, right?
You need to build that thing back up from the ground floor, don't you?
Well, and I think that if you look at it, let's just try to put a business hat on and look at the Washington Commanders from a business standpoint.
All right.
They need a stadium, and they haven't been able to figure that out. They were taking shots at the city of Washington because apparently this afternoon, I guess, basically there's going to be a press conference from, I do believe, I don't know if it's the Attorney General District Columbia or how all that works, but basically all of the federal governments or the governments that have been investigating the Washington Commanders, there's going to be a press conference today where maybe they lower the boom on Dan Snyder, right? But a lot of people are putting together that John Henry could end up making a bid, and this $5 billion that, let's be real, it's not just John Henry, it is that Fenway Sports Group that's still got Tom Werner and people like that in there, that they might then just take that money, slide it right over and say, here's a $5 billion bid for the Washington Commanders. And I would assume that'd be a cash bid, which for anybody who's ever bid on a house, you realize that when you got the cash, you got the inside track. And you're right, it is a depressed market. It's a suppressed football team. But my God, look at all the people in that area.
Yeah,
look at the people that want to root for the Redskins.
It was a good franchise. People forget about it, but it was a good franchise a long time ago.
He's going to buy it at $5 billion,
Yeah.
and within 5 years, if he plays his cards right, builds a stadium, all that stuff, that franchise rockets to $8 billion, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, it is in a place that could turn around. And I also think like the division helps. The fact that your rivals are New York, Philly, Dallas, like that is pretty good.
Yep.
So it can be turned around because for years everybody's been saying that owner's the worst. That owner's just sucking the life out of Washington, and then you have the team name that they drag their feet on changing, and then you have all the workplace, all the details coming out of that were just horrible. So
they need to get rid of Dan Snyder.
100% need a new owner. And by the way, somebody asked on the text line, so I looked it up. How much did John Henry buy Liverpool for?
I think it was under $1 billion.
If this is right, he bought it for $477 million.
How long's he owned it for? Does it say
this is
there?
2010.
Okay.
He bought it in 2010.
Well, you know what? Not completely crazy.
I mean, that is wild. No, I mean, it's good for him. Like, great. Like,
yeah,
he made
he's
some money.
a pretty pretty brilliant businessman.
But like once you hear that he's going to sell Liverpool, I think all Red Sox fans are like, all right, what does that mean for the Red Sox? Is he going to sell the Red Sox or what is it? Nope, I don't think so. Like he's going to keep the Red Sox. He has the Penguins. He still has the NASCAR thing, or did he give that up?
No, he's still part of that. Yep.
And now
Roush
getting
Fenway.
into the NFL is pretty wild, and that's the one that I think you want to be in the most, right? Like. There's going to be a lot of rich people that are going to try to buy the Phoenix Suns. There's going to be a lot of people that try to buy some of these other teams.
Wait till Las Vegas gets their expansion team.
Vegas, yeah.
And there's a lot of people who do think that maybe John Henry is sort of setting money. Maybe he's not going to go for Washington.
Right.
And that some of these funds are going to be set aside so that it can guarantee that he gets the NBA team. But I would dare say it actually gives him more leverage to get the NBA team in Las Vegas if he's also involved in the NFL.
Now, you always hear, especially since, now that he's added the Penguins, but even before the Penguins, when it was Liverpool and NASCAR and the Red Sox, you would hear all the time when the Red Sox didn't spend on, say, Mookie Betts, like, it's because Liverpool needs a new striker, and they spent him. I'm like, I'm all for criticizing and questioning the ownership group.
Yes.
But they still spend a ton of money on the Red Sox.
I think they were sixth in payroll this year, or top five.
They were sixth in payroll last year, and they were there were only 8 teams in the majors that spent over $200 million on their team, and they were one of them.
By the way, it warms my heart what you just said, because you're putting the business hat on. Like everybody who does it, to me, it's such a lazy narrative.
Oh,
right?
that they're cheap or whatever?
Well, yeah, like think about it. The NFL, all of their costs are pretty much baked in. Like player costs, it's covered by TV contracts. Because actually now it would take away a weapon from the lazy Red Sox fan who just wants to rip John Henry for whatever reason and be like, I had to put money into Liverpool. Well, guess what? He's about to cash in. And if he goes by an NFL team, we know those costs are baked in, so it's an automatic non-excuse.
Yeah,
I know you have to have the money for the bonuses.
My issue with the Red Sox has always been
how they spend.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the big issue. They don't need to be spending more than the Dodgers or the Yankees or some of those crazy deals. And there have been years where they have, by the way. John Henry has led the team when they've led it. Now, this team with their ticket prices and their beer prices, they can never be in the middle.
Correct.
Like, you can't have them in the middle or I say the bottom. Like, they need to be at the top. They have been at the top. But don't give Chris Sale $30 million when you know the guy's breaking down.
Well, there you go.
$30 million a year. Like, don't give him that. And then don't be like, well, we can't afford Mookie Betts or we can't afford Bogarts or we can't afford Devers, but then go out there and sign a whole bunch of guys at $10 million that aren't worth the $10 million. Like, punt on those guys, get the $130 million guy, and if Chaim Bloom's so good, get a bunch of good $4 or $5 million guys. Yeah, that's how you should build a team.
Or that's where your farm system should matter. Yeah. So you can keep someone like a Mookie Betts if you want to, and then you've got cheap labor in other spots to be able to balance it out. I think that's, again, and we talked about this when it went down, that's why Hosmer is so appealing to the Red Sox. They don't have to, they pay him league minimum, and it's a massive savings at that position for them.
But they have to spend money, and I think that they will. And again, I think it's unfair if they're like, they got to spend more than the Mets. It's like, well, the Mets just got a new owner. They just spent $287 million. How many playoff games did they win? Right? Like, they had a nice regular season.
They're going to keep spending because that owner is doing what. Remember when John Henry first got here and it was the Yankees are spending this? Well, then we better get our spending up there. And they were number one or number two because for a period of time in the early 2000s, the enemies to other owners in baseball were the Red Sox and the Yankees. And now it's not as much the Red Sox and the Yankees. It's what teams like the Dodgers are doing, where they're pushing like $300 million in payroll.
With the exception of Mookie Betts, because that was Dombrowski's out, Chaim Bloom's in. They were already kind of late, I think, in the negotiating. Like, they didn't get there ahead of time, and then it was just sort of kind of inevitable, which now unfortunately feels like Bogarts, and then maybe even Devers, which we'll get to. But don't you think that when they've hired guys, they've let those guys kind of run it?
Yeah.
Like, Dave Dombrowski comes in and he's like, I'm going to spend crazy money on David Price, even though the organization just said they wouldn't do it. Like, John Henry and those other guys are like, we're not spending big money on 30-year-old pitchers. But Dombrowski comes in and is like, no, I'd like to. And you're like, okay, fine. So if they're going to sign off on the Price deal, they're going to sign off on a trade to bring in Craig Kimbrell, pay a closer through the nose. Like, they were spending huge money with Dombrowski. Then they decided as an organization not necessarily cheap up, but they're like, all right, is this sustainable? Can we keep winning this way? So let's pivot, go to this guy in Chaim Bloom, and now you're pissing off all the fans because you already got a good minor league system, but what does that have to do? Your homegrown guys are now walking away in free agency.
Well, see, there's the balance of the homegrown guys. Yeah. You're either now flipping them to make a trade, which I know we're going to get to because there was some Red Sox pitching news yesterday that I know you were not thrilled about, and we will get to that.
No.
But that's kind of the crux of the deal. Like, you either have young talent at positions to where you're able to pay a guy 4 years under $1 million for like 4 years to be able to afford the high-priced outfielder or high-priced pitcher. I don't know if this sale ties into free. I do not buy that whatsoever. I think all of these leagues, they have their own economic model. Again, it's really funny to me. Like, if John Henry owned Washington in the NFL now versus Liverpool this whole time, right? Mm-hmm. Say he had that. I'm sure there would be people, again, it would just take the narrative of, well, I guess you needed a left tackle for the football team or something like that. But the people who make those comments about Liverpool and the EPL, they have no idea about the cost structure over there at all. There's a small portion of our audience, like when Tony Khan came on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like Russ Goldman, who's one of the guys who covers the Revs, he's like, can you ask him if Fulham is going to do da-da-da-da-da? He gets the business of that. But the people who would roll out I guess they needed a midfielder, have no clue about the business of that league.
And then especially when, you look at the, now that he owns the Penguins. All right, well, there's a cap. They're going to spend probably to the cap, I would imagine, like right around there. NFL, obviously, there could be some kind of funny money, but you have a general idea of like sort of how much you're going to be spending on it. And now, like Liverpool, like some of those player contracts are insane. And then all the transfer fees and all that other stuff, which we don't really get into and talk about.
Headache.
But let's face it, it's a lot of money. If they're selling the franchise for $5 billion, the players are making a ton, the transfer fees are a ton. There's a lot of money involved
for
there.
Like 1,000% markup or whatever it would be.
So if he's just pivoting it over to the Washington Commanders now, like, I don't know, because I don't look at him anyway as one of these owners that is watching every inning and every pitch of the Red Sox and is caring so much about it.
This is big business on a
it's big business.
Billionaire. This is billionaire's room type stuff.
And that's why Chaim Bloom's the one that should be on the hot seat, because I think John Henry's the one that's like, all right, you're in charge. You're in charge of the Red Sox and the roster moves and things like that. Yes, he would have to sign off on a $300 million Devers deal, but if Chaim Bloom really pitched it to him and sold it to him as like, this is what we need to do, I think he would do it.
And if Chaim has a budget, and as long as that deal is within the budget, it might be as simple as, John, here's what I've pitched. Here's what I'm thinking of doing.
Right.
Here's how it works within the budget. He goes, great, bingo, bango, it's done.
Because that's how I would view it, right? And again, it's easy to, if you want to criticize Henry and say, oh, he's got his hand in all these different things, but there's plenty of owners out there that have like enterprises and just it's not solely focused and, they're not a fit. And I think in this town, what is different, too, is you look at Wick Grossbeck and you look at Robert Kraft, and you're like, those guys want their teams to win. Like, they are fans.
Fans.
They are fans.
Bingo.
Who happen to be really good businessmen with billions of dollars, but it matters to them.
Yep.
Like, if they lose in the wild card round, that stings Robert Kraft. If they lose in the NBA Finals, Wick is like, oh, my God, we're 2 wins away. If the Red Sox lose or they miss the playoffs, he's just checking how much money they lost.
It doesn't keep him up at night.
But that is how some owners are across. Like, you're not going to have fans owning every single team.
If you live in Minnesota,
in this city, we kind of do.
Yeah, if you live in Minnesota, the Twins have been just trash for a long period of time because the owner doesn't care, and that sucks the life out of you as a fan.
Right.
Does it? Do you think when it comes, if John Henry is the guy that the rest of the owners pick in the NFL, does RKK sign off on that? Because all the other owners get a vote, and we know that there are 4 competing ad dollars for front page, back page, internet buzz, news, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
There is a friendly battle between the two, but sometimes I wonder how friendly it is.
No, it is. I think it's, and all the owners have talked about it. Like, it is led to a lot of competitiveness. Because you can't be the one lagging behind, right? So obviously you're out there and like, oh, look, our goal every week is to beat the Jets, the Bills, and the Dolphins. It's like, yeah, but also if the Red Sox are winning a World Series and the Celtics are winning titles, like you can't fall behind in that whole thing. I think because it's not like all of a sudden there would be Washington fans around here.
No.
Like, there's not Penguins fans. Like, nobody likes it that way. And if
Right.
anything, it might even hurt John Henry a little bit because more Red Sox fans kind of roll their eyes. Like, so the Red Sox owner also owns the Commanders. Like, that one's, I think, more. I don't think Kraft would step in the way of this at all. And it's an NFC team. You play them once every 4 years.
I'm
It's
also thinking of, you're right there, the business conflict wouldn't be here, but just in terms of, the little animus that you
It's
hear.
weird, but
competitiveness between the franchises.
But he's already done it. And I don't even know if the Jacobs do you think they gave a rat's ass that he got into the NHL?
Oh, no. If anything, it actually brought somebody in with more money that would help
so
raise.
there's that.
Because I just Googled this. It's if you do John Henry net worth, okay? Now, again, this is just on the Google. It comes up $4 to $4.5 billion. David Tepper, who just bought the Carolina Panthers, his net worth is $18.5 billion. That's the kind of room that we're talking about. Like, there's the high rollers room, and then there's the real high rollers room. And that, I think, is, in terms of John Henry trying to get to $10 billion, $12 billion, this is one of those ways to be able to do it.
Because LeBron's a part of his team, the NFL would actually view that as like, oh, that's pretty good?
Yep.
I think so.
No question.
I think they'd be like, all right, that really strengthens his case.
No question. Yeah. And LeBron probably doesn't have to pony up very much in the end. No. A lot of it, I'm sure, is sweat equity or, how should I put it? Like the popularity of LeBron helps them.
It's like when Fox gave Tom Brady that deal. It's like they gave him so much money, and it was more than just him calling games, which who knows if he'll even ever actually do that.
Well, that's true.
But it's just sort of like having him, like his presence, I guess, helps.